Friday the 13th. It's a date that most people feel very superstitious of, yet might not even know why. Perhaps they had an older family member who taught them about it, or some of the younger people might have figured it out from the internet or social media. Even just Googling it, I mostly got results for the 1980 slasher flick franchise featuring Jason Voorhees, and barely anything on the actual date itself. While no one really knows where the superstition originated, there are a few theories and myths about this day. Tonight, on a special episode of Carnival of Souls, we're going to tell you a few things about Friday the 13th. There are two terms for the fear of Friday the 13th, or the number 13 itself, in which I won't even begin to try to pronounce. But before the late 1800s, most people didn't even take notice of Friday the 13th. In fact, they say it was Captain William Fowler who popularized the number 13 being an unlucky myth. He took notice of all the 13s in his life, which included the school he went to being called the Public School 13, and fighting in 13 Civil War battles. He wanted to remove the stigma of the number 13 being unlucky, and decided to create the 13 Club. They held their first meeting September 13, 1881. Guests were made to walk under ladders, and a banner that read, "Those of us who are about to die salute you," to get to a 13-seated table with salt spilled over it. The 13 Club's 13 members met every 13th of every month, enjoying a 13-course meal. This is held at the Knickerbocker Cottage in, you guessed it, room 13. The myth of 13 being unlucky does go even further back though. In Norse mythology, there was a big party being celebrated by 12 gods. A 13th god, Loki, shock of all shocks, crashed the party and shot the god of joy and happiness, Balder. There's also the Christian tale of the Last Supper. There was only supposed to be 12 guests. Judas was the 13th guest. Of course, Friday was the next day, and the day Jesus would be crucified. Some now believe it is very bad luck to have 13 guests at a table. It's also said that Eve gave Adam the apple on a Friday. I've also heard that it was the 13th day as well, so Friday the 13th, maybe. Cain killed Abel on a Friday as well. There have been some horrible incidents that happened on Friday the 13th. King Henry IV imprisoned the Knight Templar October 13th, 1307, and later had them executed. Buckingham Palace was bombed in World War II on September 13, 1940. In Bangladesh on November 13, 1970, a cyclone killed 300,000 people. A Chilean Air Force plane disappeared in the Andes on Friday 13, October 1972. 16 survivors showed up 2 months later. Sadly, they had been forced to eat dead passengers in order to survive. Daz Baxter tried to hide from Friday the 13th, but sadly his plan to stay in bed all day backfired, as he was killed by the floor of his apartment block caved in 1976. Rapper Tupac Shakur died on Friday, September 13, 1996. He had been shot in a drive-by 6 days earlier. I could go on and on of the misfortune events of the day. Friday the 13th is a prominent day in pop culture as well. In 1907, Thomas William Lawson wrote a book titled Friday the 13th about a New York City stockbroker who plays on the superstitions of the date to create chaos on Wall Street. The Friday the 13th slasher franchise started in 1980 and has had 10 movies to date, 1 crossover with the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and a remake. I hope you all enjoyed this episode and learned a little bit more about Friday the 13th. You all stay safe out there. Join us again for more fun, fear, and entertainment. Happy slashing!